IT student, yes. Yes, I failed draping, but they passed because I was cute then. And I never graduated. I got drafted, but I did go to FIT for about 4 years. I was an evening student while working in the industry, because those years, when we grew up, which is in Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York, I don't know anyone comes from there, it was a pretty tough, rugged neighborhood. And we were ultra poor, and that's how I was able to go to college in the evening. I couldn't do it during the daytime because we were virtually penniless. I started off after school. Do you want to hear this little bit as we go on? I started off at 14. I was self-supporting since 11. And I started to deliver fabrics after school, high school. I had an early session. Made the basketball team, and I had to quit it. It was my big loss of my life. Then I became, after delivery boy, I became a shipping clerk. Then I went on the road for a firm, and then eventually, with virtually no money, I went into business with a partner. And those days, you could do those things. Manufacturing was done domestically. It is not any longer. You could be an entrepreneur, and people would buy based on the merit of the clothing. That is no longer being done today to quite an extent. Went into business in 1967, did not draw a salary for 2.5 years. Then I rewarded myself with $50 a week, and we went from there. And today we do about $100 million a year. Harve Benard also has a majority interest in a firm called New Frontier, which is more you. It's a contemporary line, and it fills a space that we as a career-oriented firm do not have. It's casual wear, weekend wear. It's a fairly new venture for us. This firm's been in business 15 years, and it complements us as a firm. Originally produced domestically, that no longer exists. Then we went into Eastern Bloc. We went into the Czech Republic, when it was Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, etc. In 1991, when the Soviet Union was broken up, 4 weeks later we were there. It was called Russia, Ukraine, Moldova, etc. And we started operations there. The only reason we did it because we're known as a tailored firm. And they were very able to expedite what we had to get done. Today, there's a new vibe, and the vibe is we have to manufacture very, very efficiently. They expect the same quality we've always had. For example, when we went into business in 1967, my coats wholesaled for $140, and now they wholesale for $45. 30 some odd years, 38 years have gone by, and this is the only industry that suffers from deflation. The industry's changed dramatically. It's now governed by people like Jones of New York, by Liz Claiborne, and how they do it, they just add brands to their stable. We're called middle market. Anyone know what middle market means? We're an endangered species. These are firms that do between $50 and $100 million a year. We have our overheads, and we're hard-pressed to make a living because stores are doing all the stuff on their own. So as graduates in design, the chances are you'll be working for a retail organization and not a manufacturer, because retailers are the new manufacturers. So essentially, we're competing with our own store group that we're selling, which is quite a problem. You have water? Think of your questions, because this will be informal about 1 minute's time. Hang in. Where we used to sell, and we still do, we sell the Lord and Taylors of the world, we sell the Bloomingdales and people like this. We do not make a living on these people. They would prefer to have a higher profile name. Where we make our living is Filing's Basement, Loman's, tons of specialty stores out of town. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Bolton chain around the New York area. And that's where we make our living. It's people who go to work, make a living, they want phenomenal value. We probably make easily, and that's our reputation, probably the best made garment at the price probably in the world. And that I say proudly because it's a very difficult thing for anyone to do, and that's our raison d'etre in this industry. And because of it, we're still alive. Being in business for almost 40 years' time is akin to being a cabinet maker through the family history from the 16th century. It's virtually almost impossible The industry has an attrition rate of approximately 20% a year. That means, in theory, outside of a few people, every 5 years, you're gone, and you have to start all over again. What I'd like to do now at this point, so I brought you kind of up to date as to where we are. We are in an acquisition mode, filling in the areas that we're not in, and primarily is because today you're eaten up by expenses. Everything is expensive. So when you produce a line, for example, we're producing close to 5 million garments a year, which makes us a moderate firm, no big deal one way or another. But in order to handle the overhead, the cost per unit has to go down. And the only way to make it go down is to increase your units. However, there's a finite amount of people in an audience, so I may make a heck of a lot more pair of pants, but you're only buying one at the end of the day, and I have tremendous competition. So what we're looking to is fill the voids that we see in areas that we have no competence in or very limited competence, buy that firm and have them do it kind of in a very miniature way like the Liz Claiborne's of the world. There's 45 to their stable. They do $4.6 billion. It's run by Paul Charon. I don't know if he's spoken here, but he speaks. The guy's absolutely brilliant. He doesn't come from a pure apparel business, which probably not to the detriment and probably to enhancement of the industry, with a new vision. So the industry needs visionaries. The other big difference is today everyone sources in China. Are there any people that become merchandisers here? Show of hands, anyone? Nobody's becoming a merchandiser? Great field. We got one. Yay, my guy.
FMM, raise your hand.
Are you merchandisers?
Yes, they have got.
So how come nobody raise it? We have to make this intimate. I don't speak for a living.
Well,
What you have to know.
merchandising, raise your hands up.
The reason is I really want to address what you want to hear, not what I want to say.
And then the other half are fashion design majors. Raise your hand high.
Okay, let me tell you how the world's going to affect you when you will get out of school. I teach a class, this is my first class that I'm teaching. I really do it for the money. You express yourself in design, and when you go to a design firm, you will lose all that expression. What they do want is a raw talent, and that talent has to be directed toward the mode and the look of the firm that you're going to. You'll probably have to fit into a price point. You have to buy piece goods within a certain level, there's certain parameters. You will adhere to those parameters. You have to know your yardage requirements. It'll fit into there. You have to know the account that you're selling. It'll fit into there because some stores use one look, another look. For example, if you were going to Ellen Tracy, you would have to have that Ellen Tracy look, Anne Klein, etc. If you're a real iconoclast, you probably want to build a little store somewhere on the Lower East Side and have your little eponymous store and probably live like you're living in a dorm at the age of 41, which is not what you really want to do. For merchandisers, you're going to have to know a heck of a lot more than you know in fields you don't think even exist. Quotas, for example. Why you can't produce in a certain country. To be expeditious in certain areas. Like, for example, at the moment, we don't produce anything in India because of a very poor track record. These are things you learn. Has nothing to do with your merchandising skills. You have to have suddenly a global outlook. You should be reading The Economist, Business Week, Forbes, on, which I'm sure nobody does. I would think and hope that everyone works part-time in a retail environment to know what their real customers are all about. I hope that you all buy women's wear daily because it gives you, it's our Bible, and you get into the rhythm of the industry. You don't want to be an outsider. My best piece of advice to everyone graduating, go to the first job. Hopefully it's not such a big firm where you only buy blue buttons. Hopefully it's not so small where you can't get paid every week. Learn your craft. Don't change jobs every 18 months because by the third 18 month, it's not the industry, it's you. You screwed up. Stay basically with the same firm so your moves are not lateral moves, but you're going up. I've seen very few success stories where lateral moves do it. It just really doesn't do it. And get your education will be different than the FIT education. The last thing I can suggest to you, it's not about you anymore. I know when you're a certain age, the whole world revolves around you, your social life, your hair color, on and on and on. You walk out, you're just a piece of meat, you're as good as the productivity that you offer, and that's it. And now you really have to prove yourself. You can be super aggressive, but my suggestion is get along with everyone, don't screw your coworker, be the positive one, because those are the people who, if you're liked, they will gravitate toward you to anything. If someone else is not doing their job, do their job, your job, in the most positive way, because people gravitate to people who do more. I find I give my busy executives the most work to do, because I know they'll accomplish it. This industry is a very highly paid industry if you hit it right and go to where you're supposed to be going. Production people make a fortune, but you have to be awfully good. Salespeople, who very few people say, oh, I don't want to be a salesman, they make the most money of all because there's a direct relationship between your productivity, which is sales, and income to the firm. That's a very tangible thing. Otherwise, it's not so tangible. You're a designer. Yeah, that's great, whatever it is. You're worth X amount of dollars. And it's wonderful. You listen to the young guys, the Zach Posens, on and on. They're very inspirational. They're very emotional, on and on. What I represent is another sphere, and that sphere of hard, cold, deadly reality. But that's where most clothing is sold. So I'm the ultimate pragmatist in this area, and that's probably where you'll wind up. There's the Karl Lagerfelds, the icons of the world. There's only one guy called Karl Lagerfeld. And a couple of people like Parenza Schroeder's, you're going to have them happen, but you're going to be in the real world. That's the world I'd like you to address if possible. At this point, can I open up to any questions you might have relating to your life and how I can... I know a lot about a little, I know a little about a lot. I can almost answer anything related to our industry. How can I be of service to you and what you'd like to see out of this industry or information that I can give you? That's great. I was so good that nobody has... There you go. Can you stand? Because my hearing is shot.
Stand up.
My name is Nathan McDonald. I wanted to ask you in modern terms, how much does it cost to start up your own firm in terms of dollar amount?
The cost to start?
Yeah.
Great subject. It's a required glass of water to answer this one now. When I started, I'll give you my figure. We started with $60,000. I was supposed to do $100,000 in the first year. We got lucky, we did $1 million. So we made money, but I couldn't take a salary because we had to keep divvying it up. But times were a little different because everything was done domestically. So you were able to produce quickly, get paid, give it out, get paid again, and churn your money many, many times. I would not enter this field with, I wouldn't consider money to enter the field because you're not going to make it using money, like family money, $200,000 from your Uncle Charlie and stuff like that. My advice is a couple of things. Firstly, work for someone to get the hang of it all, because in addition to great garments, there's a timing issue. You have to reinvigorate it and have a new line every 6 weeks. So you may have a great inspirational idea. How are you going to market it? What price are you going to be? It has nothing to do with really fashion as we know it, unless you want to sell some small specialty stores, and even they're very select. Whether you take Jeffries or people like that, there are a dime a dozen people running up to try to sell these guys. My suggestion would be, if you want to be successful and not lose your money, is work for someone for a short time, get the hang of what's going on, become somewhat known in the industry, and try to convince someone that you'd like to be a division of a larger firm, and you will now have the support of the financial support, the back-end support, and all the other parts that you would need to be successful. Now, what are you giving up? Some independence, a partnership to some degree, but the chances of survival are pretty good on your own. If you look at all the firms, and you're looking at Bryant Park and all these little firms that go on and off, you see a slew of new names every single season because they think their way to entry is through the press and editorials. That editorial the day later is garbage and it gets dumped out. I have 2 stories to tell you, and I'll leave both names anonymous for you. 2 guys worked in my firm in design. We have a way of keeping people a long time because I'm all bark and no bite. So these both guys worked for me for about 15 years. One guy decided to go into business, and with my whole heart support. And what he did, he went into a living room and a bedroom, and he wanted to make jersey dresses for women. They started with very little money, went to a contractor, helped them cut the goods, made some styles, ran around to the little stores that got a rep that did it as well. Started off zero overhead. He's now in business. It'll be the third year, surviving, and in his way, thriving. It's silk jersey dresses. He found a spot. That's one guy. Second guy, another one of my assistants to remain nameless, he went the press way. He figured if he could get notoriety, it would happen because the press would say how great that line was. So he had one runway show with someone's money, wiped out all their money, never produced the garment. Second one runway, wiped out a backer, never produced the garment. Currently had a third show just now. The press wasn't so good. And the title, I'm going to make the title a little vague, was A Fleeting Moment, which means you have the one great idea, and then you lost the idea. And he was part of that article and will probably fail. So yes, you can start with very little money, a great idea. You've got to have some background. You cannot take that shortcut. It won't work, or the chances of work are non-existent. And do it that way, hand to mouth, starving a little bit, placing it, getting someone to do it. But you have to know about construction, you have to know about the market, you have to know who the heck to go after to try to sell, which would be independent specialty stores. You have to set up your own little bookkeeping. You can survive. Very difficult, but it is still doable in this age. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's the only two ways that I know of entering this field. It's very, very competitive, but it's workable, and that's why you're here. Anyone else? Sure. Can someone interpret what he says? Because I'm not going to hear. Can you guys hear him? Would you tell me what he says?
Louder, please.
No, I just can't hear. You tell them.
What are realistic salaries for merchandisers, product developers, buyers, and vendor representatives?
You have to tell me.
He asked what a realistic salary.
Hold on, I'm coming to you. What?
What would be a realistic salary for a buyer, product developer?
Oh, you're so interested in money. Okay. I'm not sure about buyers. I would think between 120, and then you become merchandisers, on and on. I'll tell you the various salaries. If you were to become a seller, and you would basically be an assistant salesperson, 40, 45,000. But sellers can name their own price. I mean, there's sellers 200,000. It's not that uncommon. You have to be good. You have to be bringing in X amount of business. What other area did you want to know? Product development. That's a wide open field. The salaries could be as low as 65,000, and there are product. Do you mean production people when you're saying that?
Well, either production or just like on more than
Well, one of the product development is kind of design, and product development could also be the making of the garment, which is very critical. A great production guy will make $400,000 or $500,000 a year. That's not inconceivable because there aren't that many great ones out there. Any other question? Hit me.
Creative side. What about the creative side?
Can you come up here? You be my spokesman. What?
What about the creative side? Let's talk about it.
Okay, going salaries. As an assistant, you'll make 55, 65. As a designer, between 80 and 150. I'm not talking the Donna Karens of the world, obviously, but that would be the industry standard as it is now. But those people are the people that can go into business. A designer basically is someone who goes into business. And then look at Tommy Hilfiger. The guy was earning $21 million a year for a number of years because he had a great deal.
He was our guest speaker a few times.
Tommy Hilfiger? He's a big one. Say it real loud. I'm going to go to you.
You said
Hold on, don't start yet. What?
you said that you have to worry about construction, and there were 5 or 6 things you said you had to know. One of them was going after who you go after, the specialty stores. Will you describe the process of how to even approach someone and review your line.
Okay. Do you have a theoretical line that someone's reviewing? That would be of help. Like if you made a line,
Sure.
what's your line like? Are you tailored, soft,
Women's sportswear.
sportswear? Okay. I got, what's that? I have this. Yes, the question, if you made a line, sportswear, how would you go about selling it? Who would you address? And that's where you get your background from, because you will have worked for someone who knows, for example, do you have a price point, for example? Bridge. It's the weakest part of the market outside of Theory and Ellie Tahari, who are both really thriving. All the others, the Ellen Tracy's and the Dana Buckmans, are getting a little, a weak spawn to secrecy here, is getting a little tired at this point. The only way you could pull it off is to have a style that you actually look at. As a specialty store, you have a very small line. Your line may be, you're doing it yourself, 6 to 8 to 10 pieces, making one statement. And when I, as a buyer for specialty, see it, I'm literally falling off the floor. I cannot live without this garment. Pretty hard task. You have a shot at it, and if you're making it domestically, you're automatically bridge, because your jacket's got to retail for $350, your pants at $120 to $150, and you start in the smallest way, finding a local factory which can do it for you, and that's how it is extremely hard to do. It's a killer. Conversely, if you work for someone for a while and you have that styling, any smart entrepreneur may put you on with some kind of percentage or a division or whatever. You can't shortcut the system, and that's why people make young people to get old. It takes a while to pull this thing off. There are very, very few success stories, although overtly it looks successful, whether it's a Derek Lamb, and this is only because it's been in the paper, like a Derek Lamb, I think, did $5 million, is still struggling to earn $1. Forenza Schuller has a German backer, an anonymous backer. Do they make money? I'm not even sure, and they just got accolades for their line of, the people go on style.com, which you should. They have an architecture line that just came out the other day. It looks very nice. These kids are huge successes in the public's eye. I don't know if they've yet to make their first dime. So they have this backer that's willing to wait for them to develop and become something. The glamour in this is virtually nothing. A lot of air kissing, but it doesn't pay the bills. Anyone else?
The durability of a name.
It takes a while. It takes a while to, and then you find yourself in a niche, and that's your niche in life, whether you like it or not.
But many, as you said, have accolades, have awards, have everything.
But you know, it's what you read, and I can't blame anybody. It's wonderful, but you can't live on it, unfortunately.
Had some guest speakers that shall be nameless who were really outstanding, and now no one even remembers them over the 14 years ago.
Yeah. Anyone else?
How about,
Yeah. Well, hold on. You have no idea how old I am. I have no idea how old I am. Yes.
How much you're involved with your hiring process, but what do you look for in like new?
In what category?
In like more business, like merchandising. Like what do you look for when you have students come and interview for?
Okay. What do we look for when we have students, or not students, employees looking for employment, particularly in merchandising area? That would be an example. Am I right? This is your problem. It's the chicken or the egg. When they come to us, it's hard to evaluate someone unless they've had prior experience. And then you'll say, well, I don't have prior experience. How in the world are you going to hire me? Usually you go in as an assistant job, and we look for bright people, and we kind of know within a week or two what's going to happen with you, but you would be coming in really entry level. And it just goes right down to personality. If you're a whiner, forget it. If you're late, forget it. It doesn't work. If you have to be reminded to do anything, that doesn't work at all. We have a young gal who works for us. She's getting married. We're going to lose her, unfortunately. She started off as an assistant to a salesperson, maybe 3 years ago. most dynamic young woman I've ever seen. She went like this. And now unfortunately, she's getting married in Jersey. She lives in East Hampton. She has a rich boyfriend. We're going to lose her. But that was a perfect example of a rookie coming in that showed there's no negative part of this woman. Everything is positive, yes, and people will answer the phone, they'll take a reorder. Give me a yellow, 8, 12, and a 16. So she says, right, but there's blue, and then there's other style. And before you know it, a 3-piece reorder becomes a 24-piece reorder. Well, what do? You give her more and more and more. You have to be super aggressive, the most wonderful person in the world. You cannot whine. You cannot, that body language is half the battle, and that's why there's so many really mundane people in our industry, and the stars really rise, you have no idea. We love people like that, but you can't be the kid. You're now the super wonderful person everyone loves, the big smile, the whole thing. You don't bring to work your personal tragedies. Nobody cares about your boyfriend, your girlfriend, nobody cares. They just want you there, make it happen, and they want your knowledge. Did you see that article in Women's Wear? Yeah, I read it. I wrote it on Sunday. And this is what I think about it. Or you go to the designer, hey, I pulled this cutout. What do you think of this? You're a star. It's so easy. It's almost pathetic, and nobody knows the secret. It's a cinch, believe me. This is not rocket scientry over here.
Questions? You better think of it because you're standing in front of a wealth of knowledge and information. How many of you are graduating?
So where are you going to get your job from?
Yeah. Ask Benard.
You guys have connections in the market? Have you established any? Have you? Because you can't go as a raw rookie. You're just one of 19 gazillion that are coming through the door. Any of you guys work in the industry now?
Raise your hand.
Yeah, but you really have to. You have to start networking, get a couple of friends, what's going on. And particularly in sales, it's all about relationships. Even in merchandising, even in production, it's all about relationships with this factory, what's going on. You have to be a wealth of knowledge right up front to have any value. Otherwise, you have no value. You're nothing. You can be disposed of. Why not become invaluable? It's so easy. No big deal.
Questions? Because in the introduction to the class, I said, and one of the values of this class, I tell them to network. Every guest speaker who comes, get their card so that when you go out looking, you can call, you can say, I heard you speak, I was impressed. Make an introduction, gather information every Monday.
Look, I understand your position. It's very tough. You're not coming from this background. You're entering a field. It's a tough field, and yet it's a very rewarding field. It's actually a lot of fun to be in. It's a very exciting field. It is definitely not boring. It's very traumatic in many cases. And you have to be full of enthusiasm for what you do and really up and make it happen. It's half the battle is just being there, making yourself exciting. It just can't be a wimp. Nobody cares about you. You've got to be out there.
Oh, there's one up there. Good. Stand up.
Listen in tough.
As you mentioned, you got your resource, like everyone is getting their resource from China. So how did you get yours?
Okay, what is about China?
How did you get your resources from China?
How are we getting to manufacturing there?
Yes.
Oh, that's easy. First of all, you have to manufacture in China. These are the problems. China today is I think probably the leading supply in many, many different areas, but there are certain requirements, and one of them are minimums. You have to produce X amount of goods. As a fledgling new firm, you will not be able to take advantage of China unless you're part of a larger organization, and yes, you're producing a little amount of goods, and what they'll do if you're that good and they feel they want you, they'll set up a sample room within a factory and produce small lots for you with an added charge to it. On your own, this will never happen. Eventually, to be competitive, you must produce in the Far East. We do the Far East and we do Eastern Europe. as well, because our goods really sell very inexpensively. And that's why I always say hook up with a manufacturer who's in business and partner up with that particular person. They have access to resources you do not have. And yes, you must be in China. But being in China, you have to understand that there are quotas. Everyone knows what quotas is at this point, right? Hopefully. And that's why I always love to see people partner up. You can't do it on your own. It's impossible. We go in with lots. If there are minimums of 3,000 per style, yeah, we can hit that 3,000 per style. But you have to really know a lot about the quota situation, capacities, what level you have to produce your goods at, because you cannot falter in that particular area. It's a great question, and that's part of why you should hook up with a manufacturer. And wait, don't jump in. You only have one shot really to go into business using someone else's money, and it may never come again. Make sure it's your wise move. Yes? Interpret, hang in.
What are some of the mistakes that successful designers make that cost them?
What are some of the mistakes that Dash designers?
Successful designers make that cost them.
Fashion designers? I'm sorry.
Successful.
We all make, I make beauties. I mean, some of mine are the things that have more rights than wrongs. I think the designer makes a lot of mistakes when they don't understand their particular firm and their particular environment and who actually they're selling. For example, I try not to discourage my designers from saying what they want to see and trying to do what they want to do within a certain realm. And they'll say to me, but let's just try it. But if my account listed retail, for example, let's take a suit business. If my accounts are telling me that they cannot retail a suit above $59, which means I have to back it in Keystone or less, so I know I can be $29 or $31 maxed out depending on the account, and then I have a fabric that costs more money, and my wholesale suddenly is $49, and they'll say, let's try it. The chances of success are non-existent. So those are mistakes that we've made in the past. Or we can misread something, or we can be too fast. For example, 2 years ago, I made the midi coat. Anyone know what a midi coat is? It hasn't been around the longest time. It's a coat to the ankles, fitted, very chic. You're seeing it on the runways now. You know how many I sold? 0. But luckily I didn't make it because I'm smarter than that. Then I waited a year and I showed it again. You know how many coats I sold? 0. This season I'm showing it again and I'm getting reaction. Sometimes you can be a little ahead of the path of your firm. We're not known as a leading firm from fashion. I may have to wait a year before I introduce it. And this comes because basically I've been working since I'm 14 and I still make my set of mistakes. A smart manufacturer will not let you make too many mistakes because they'll see what you're doing. You've got to make mistakes because you made decisions. No one will ever not make any mistakes. Anyone else?
Do you know if fashion forecasting is still like an existing field? Is it growing or?
Yeah, I mean, it exists. It's a money maker. You take, anybody know the Doniger Buying Organization?
It's our guest speaker often.
Pardon?
David Wolf is always a guest
Yeah,
speaker.
many years ago, there were 100 buying offices, as there were 100 store groups. It's down to 1. They have a fashion forecasting, which is to some degree helpful if you adapt it to your needs. And for a place like Doniger, although it's a great service, it adds to the money-making stream within the buying office. So it's a dubious achievement. I see no reason why you can't prognosticate your own design forecasting if you're a specialist in your field. For example, if you're really a specialist, you're a skirt maker. You know the long skirts are very hot, not straight ones, tied to the body and then they flare out. So you look at you look on the streets. We go to Europe a couple of times a year to get the vibe of what's going on. And if you do it on a daily basis, you're in the fashion realm. You're not going to fall out of it. It's only when you do it sporadically that you'll fall out of it. But there's a rhythm. You get into this rhythm of looking at things, and it has to, can I make it at this price? Who's my target audience? In this case, it's your mom. What would I wear? What am I known for? What fabric can I buy it for? And this comes in a nanosecond because you have the experience. It's not a formal education. I'll take a look at that garment. Okay, great, it's got the new sleeve. That's a poet's sleeve, you know. That's very hot right now all of a sudden. And then once I say, okay, I know that I'll take 3 meters worth of goods, I can make it in this factory, I know the cost, yeah, I can produce at retail at $69, I'm all set. That's experience. But fashion forecasting is good, but it's not the Bible. It may be great for Bendel. It may not be great for you. You may be too far ahead. You may be too far behind. You may be at Talbot's, and it really doesn't even relate to you at all. Or your Urban Outfitters, and it really does relate. It's a loaded question. It's very difficult to answer. Anyone else?
Benard, what is your feeling about the word creativity as a product, as an item? I feel that it's sort of falling off. People don't concentrate on the creativity.
The problem you have that every buyer, people who become buyers, you're responsible for the bottom line. Your department has to hit the industry or your store's expectations of you. What it does, it deters you from making chancy decisions. You may have your feeling, but the safety rules, which why in many department stores, the product at best is kind of mundane. It's like, okay. And specialty stores is which is why you go to specialty stores, because they could be more adventuresome. But the fact is that you're buyers, that means you're working for a buying organization, because as a specialty store, that owner is the buyer, basically. And you're going to play it kind of safe, because you don't want to get into trouble. And for example, if you're buying Jones New York, and they screw up, well, it's Jones. I mean, I bought the right perm. I did everything right. They had an off season. It's never your fault. Where you fall short, say your department has to run at 41 points, and you fought management and you really believed in this new product, if you fail, you've basically lost your job. Therein comes the safety factor. You start to get a little paranoid and you play it safe. Look at Macy's or any one of these stores. Very few experimental things go on those floors. There's such a dilution from the original vision, Balenciaga, let's take that for example, and that when you walk into West 22nd Street, what you eventually see at Balenciaga. One exception might be, it was a favorite of mine, like Comme des Garçons. That lady is her own lady and you have to love her for it. She's in her own business. She doesn't have to answer to anybody, and she's absolutely brilliant, and there you get that creativity. But when you work for someone else, unfortunately, you're going to be playing it safe. It's just the way life is.
However, Bernard, if you believe in something so much and you're willing to lose your job and you want the company to try it and it's a great success, what do you do then?
Still don't do it because you're going to lose your job. You're going into a cold economic situation. It has nothing to do with vision. Unless you want to live at the age of 41 in a dorm-like situation and have a little shopping on the Lower East Side. There's a reality here. There's a disconnect from what your love is to the real world. But I will tell you one thing. If you're going to have to compromise, you don't want to compromise, the industry won't compromise you. But if you want to compromise a little on a commercial level, you'll have the most wonderful personal life. There's no compromising whatsoever. What is it you want to give up? You're becoming commercial, you're selling yourself and your ideals to some degree, and maybe they're right and you're wrong, possibility, and yet you can live a wonderful life on your own. People say, well, how can you make this? I said, no, I don't make this, I make that, so I can buy this. So there's everyone will compromise to some level. If you don't, you better be like Comme des Garçons. There's only one of this lady. Anything else?
Is there a question up there? Speak up. I thought you'd be full of questions because this is a rare opportunity to have. Mr. Holtzman, of course, is a critic. How many of you take classes with George Simon? Raise your hand.
George is great, by the way.
Yes, great talent, great talent. And Mr. Holtzman was the critic for the show, for George Simonton. So he's part of the family of FIT, so you can ask him anything you want. But I will always take the position of creativity, if you don't mind.
I'm a pragmatist because I was so poor and I believe in reality. I'm an unbelievable realist.
Well, realists also have to dream.
I'll hang out here for a few minutes. You guys have a personal question?
Yes.
I'll be happy to answer it if I possibly can. Thank you.